2 Jedi Knights saved the Republic from total destruction. Then they became the thing everyone feared most. Here's how it happened. The galaxy was a mess in the years after the Great Sith War. Exar Kun's rebellion had left worlds burning and military forces scattered. While everyone was busy rebuilding, the Mandalorians saw their chance. These warrior clans had a new leader named Mandalore the Ultimate, and he was preparing his people for another crusade across the stars. What nobody knew at the time was that a hidden Sith Emperor was pulling strings from the shadows. He sent visions to Mandalore, showing him glory and conquest, basically tricking the Mandalorians into starting a war that would serve Sith purposes. Around 3976 BBY, Mandalore's Neo-Crusader armies hit the Outer Rim like a hammer. They moved fast and hit hard, conquering system after system before the Republic even understood what was happening. The Mandalorians wiped out entire species during their advance. The Cathar people were slaughtered as an example of what happened to those who resisted. The Republic military was still recovering from the last war. They couldn't match the speed of the Mandalorian assault. World after world fell as the invaders pushed toward the core, and the Jedi Council did nothing. See, the Council was scared. They'd just dealt with Exar Kun and his dark side followers. They worried this might be another trap designed to turn Jedi toward darkness. So they made a choice that would split their entire order apart. They forbade any Jedi from joining the war effort. Republic citizens watched their homes burn while the Jedi stayed in their temples. The frustration among younger Jedi Knights grew intense. 2 names kept coming up in those arguments: Revan and his closest friend Alec, who everyone would later know as Malak. Revan was brilliant, charismatic, and completely convinced the Council was wrong. He wasn't going to sit around while people died. So Revan broke ranks and formed his own group called the Revanchists. Dozens of Jedi followed him, including Malak and a general named Mitra Surik, who would later be called the Exile. The moment Revan entered the war, everything changed. His tactical mind was something the galaxy hadn't seen in generations. Battle after battle, Revan outsmarted the Mandalorians and started taking back lost territory. Republic soldiers who'd been losing for years suddenly had hope. They called Revan their savior. The war dragged on for years, with massive casualties on both sides. Finally, in 3960 BBY, Revan orchestrated one last devastating battle at a world called Malachor V. He'd discovered a terrible weapon called the Mass Shadow Generator. This thing could manipulate gravity itself, crushing everything in range. Revan lured the entire Mandalorian fleet to Malachor and activated the weapon. Ships were torn apart by gravitational forces. Thousands died in seconds, including many Republic troops caught in the blast. Right before the weapon fired, Revan fought Mandalore the Ultimate in single combat and ended him. As Mandalore lay dying, he revealed something crucial. A Sith had been manipulating him all along through visions and mental influence. The Mandalorian Wars had been orchestrated by an enemy the Republic didn't even know existed. Revan took Mandalore's mask as a trophy. Without it, no new Mandalore could be crowned to unite the clans. The Mandalorian threat was finished, but Revan couldn't let go of what Mandalore had told him. There was a hidden Sith Empire out there somewhere, and it was planning something. Revan had to find it. So he and Malak took a fleet of loyal ships and disappeared into the unknown regions. They brought Republic officers and Jedi who'd fought under them. Weeks passed with no word, then months. The Republic assumed Revan and his followers were lost to whatever dangers lurked in unexplored space. They had no idea what was actually happening out there in the dark. The two heroes who'd just saved the galaxy were about to become its greatest nightmare. The seeds of the Jedi Civil War had been planted the moment Revan and Malak vanished beyond known space, hunting for an enemy that would end up hunting them right back. Revan went looking for the Sith. He found them, and they broke him. Deep in the unknown regions, Revan and Malak discovered something the Republic thought was just a legend. The Sith Empire still existed on a hidden world called Dromund Kaas, and ruling over it was an emperor who'd been alive for over 1,000 years. This wasn't some regular dark side user. The Sith Emperor had powers that could shatter minds. The moment Revan and Malak arrived, he trapped them with the Force. Their wills bent under his mental assault. The Emperor declared Revan would become his new Sith Lord, with Malak serving as apprentice. Just like that, two Jedi heroes fell to darkness. The Emperor had a job for his new servants. He wanted them to find an ancient superweapon that could help him destroy the Jedi Order and conquer the Republic. So Darth Revan and Darth Malak set out on a mission to locate something called the Star Forge. According to old legends, the Star Forge was a space station built by an extinct alien race called the Rakata. This thing could supposedly pump out unlimited warships using nothing but star energy and dark side power. If the stories were true, whoever controlled it would have an unstoppable fleet. Revan and Malak started hunting for clues. The Rakata had left behind artifacts called star maps scattered across the galaxy. Each one held part of the coordinates to find the Star Forge. Finding all of them would reveal its location. Their search took them to 5 different worlds. On Dantooine, they found a star map hidden in ancient ruins near the Jedi Enclave. Revan stood at that threshold knowing what it meant. Once he crossed that line and took Sith secrets from a place so close to the Jedi, there was no going back. He did it anyway. They tracked down more star maps on Kashyyyk among the Wookiee forests, another on Manaan beneath the ocean waves, one on Tatooine buried in the desert, and the last on Korriban, deep in the tombs of dead Sith Lords. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. The star maps pointed to a remote system called Lehon, also known as Rakata Prime. That's where the Star Forge was waiting. But something changed during that long journey across the galaxy. The farther Revan and Malak traveled from Dromund Kaas, the weaker the Emperor's grip on their minds became. Distance and time let Revan's incredible willpower start pushing back against the mental chains. Eventually, both he and Malak broke free of the Emperor's control completely. Now Revan faced a choice. He could go back and serve the Emperor like a good little puppet, or he could keep the Star Forge for himself. Revan chose option 2. See, Revan had learned something during his time under the Emperor's influence. The Sith Empire was real, it was powerful, and eventually it would invade. The Republic wasn't ready for that threat. The Jedi Council was too cautious. The military was too weak. When the true Sith came, the galaxy would fall unless someone made it stronger first. Revan convinced himself he was still trying to save the galaxy. He'd just used darker methods to do it. If the Republic wouldn't unite on its own, he'd unite it by force. Once the galaxy stood as one empire under his rule, it could withstand anything the Sith Emperor threw at it. That's how Revan justified what came next. He and Malak claimed the Star Forge and fired up its production lines. The station started churning out warships by the hundreds. Fighters, cruisers, destroyers, all of them built from raw star energy and dark side power. The fleet grew faster than anything built the normal way. Darth Revan declared himself Dark Lord of a new Sith Empire. Around 3959 BBY, he brought that fleet back to known space, ready to conquer. And he didn't come back alone. Remember all those Republic soldiers and Jedi who'd followed Revan into the Mandalorian Wars? Many of them stayed loyal even after he fell. They'd fought beside him for years. They trusted him more than they trusted the Jedi Council that had abandoned them. When Revan returned as a Sith Lord, these veterans lined up to serve him again. To them, Revan was still the hero who'd saved the Republic when nobody else would. If he said the galaxy needed to change, they believed him. That's how entire fleet groups defected. That's how Admiral Saul Karath, a decorated Republic officer, switched sides and became one of Revan's top commanders. Revan's first move was taking the ancient Sith homeworld of Korriban. He and Malak rebuilt the old Sith Academy that had been abandoned for decades. They started training new dark side users in the tombs where Sith Lords had been buried thousands of years ago. Fallen Jedi who'd joined Revan learned forbidden techniques. New acolytes were recruited and corrupted. Korriban became the symbolic heart of their new empire. With a massive fleet, an army of loyal veterans, and a growing cadre of Dark Jedi, Darth Revan revealed himself to the galaxy. The Republic's former champion was now its greatest enemy, and that's when the Jedi Civil War truly began. The Republic woke up one morning to find itself at war. No declaration, no warning. Just Sith fleets dropping out of hyperspace and opening fire. Revan struck in 3959 BBY with the full weight of his Star Forge armada. His ships hit multiple targets at once across the outer rim. Shipyards burned, supply depots fell, defense stations went silent. The Republic military scrambled to respond, but they were always 2 steps behind. History would call this the Jedi Civil War. To most people in the galaxy, it looked like rogue Jedi had gone mad and turned on the Republic they once protected. Nobody understood the bigger picture. They just knew that Revan and Malak, their former heroes, were now trying to conquer everything. Revan's first targets weren't random. Every strike served a purpose. He went after the infrastructure the Republic needed to fight back, cut off their ability to build ships, move supplies, and coordinate defenses, and they'd crumble fast. His boldest move came right at the start. Revan launched an assault on the Foerost shipyards deep in the core. Foerost was one of the biggest ship construction facilities the Republic had. Massive orbital docks where brand new warships were being built. The place was supposed to be untouchable with sensor nets and defense fleets protecting it. Admiral Saul Karath made sure none of that mattered. Karath had been a Republic officer. He knew all the security codes and protocols. When he defected to Revan's side, he brought those secrets with him. Revan's strike force used Karath's codes to slip right past the sensor nets like they weren't even there. By the time Forost's defenders realized what was happening, Sith troops were already boarding their ships. The raid turned into a massacre. Republic crews fought back, but they were caught completely off guard. Sith soldiers stormed through the shipyards, seizing control of vessel after vessel. When it was over, Revan had captured 300 warships. Brand new Republic cruisers that were supposed to defend the core now flew under Sith colors. That one strike doubled the size of Revan's fleet overnight. It also sent a message. If the Sith could hit for a roast in the deep core, nowhere was safe. Panic spread through Republic High Command. Officers started wondering who else might betray them, which other insiders were feeding information to Revan. And Revan wasn't done. His navy kept moving, kept striking, kept winning. The strategy was simple but effective. Hit hard, hit fast, and be gone before reinforcements arrive. Sith fleets would appear over a world, smash the local defense forces, and jump to hyperspace before the Republic could send help. Entire sectors fell in weeks. Major trade worlds like Corellia and Duro got overrun early in the war. These weren't backwater planets. These were core world economies that kept the Republic running. Losing them sent shockwaves through galactic markets. Supply lines broke down. Trade routes got cut. The Republic's ability to sustain a long war started falling apart. Revan also knew how to exploit greed. Big corporations like Chirka saw which way the wind was blowing. They figured Revan was going to win, so why not profit from it? These companies started supplying the Sith war machine. Equipment, weapons, ships, all sold to Revan in exchange for favorable treatment once he conquered the galaxy. It was working. In just a few months, Revan's campaign had crippled the Republic's infrastructure. Worlds that should have held out for years surrendered after days. The military couldn't coordinate responses fast enough. Fear spread from system to system. But the worst part wasn't the ships or the planets falling. It was who was flying those ships and leading those attacks. Jedi. The Revanchists who'd followed Revan into the Mandalorian Wars stayed with him when he fell to darkness. These weren't new recruits being corrupted. These were experienced Jedi Knights and Padawans who'd fought beside their Republic comrades for years. They knew Jedi techniques. They knew how the Order thought and fought. When Revan revealed himself as a Sith Lord, most of his Jedi followers made the same choice. They stayed loyal to him. Some believed in his vision of a stronger, unified galaxy. Others just trusted Revan more than they trusted the Council that had abandoned them during the last war. Either way, they turned their backs on the Jedi Order and became Dark Jedi in Revan's service. Now the Jedi faced an impossible situation. Fighting the Sith was hard enough. Fighting other Jedi who knew all your moves and strategies was something else entirely. Former friends dueled each other in the ruins of burning cities. Padawans who'd trained together in the same temple tried to defeat each other on opposite sides of a war. Master faced apprentice. Brother faced sister. The Jedi Order was tearing itself apart from the inside. This wasn't just a war between the Sith and the Republic anymore. It was Jedi against Jedi, a civil war in the truest sense. For the first time in thousands of years, large groups of Force users were destroying each other while the galaxy burned around them. The Jedi Order had survived external threats before, but this was different, and it was only going to get worse. Revan wasn't just winning battles, he was swallowing the galaxy whole. Planet after planet fell to the Sith across the outer and mid-rim. Every victory gave Revan more ships, more soldiers, more resources. The snowball kept getting bigger as it rolled through Republic space. The scary part was how many people joined him willingly. Entire Republic fleets switched sides without firing a shot. Admirals who'd served the Republic for decades took one look at Revan's forces and decided they'd rather join than die. Some believed in Revan's vision, others just wanted to survive. Either way, whole battle groups defected and started flying Sith colors. At the peak of his power, Revan controlled huge chunks of the galaxy. He set up puppet governments on conquered worlds and stationed troops to keep order. Systems that resisted got crushed. Systems that surrendered got absorbed into his growing empire. But here's what made Revan different from other Sith conquerors. He didn't destroy everything he touched. Most Sith lords throughout history burned worlds just to prove a point. Revan was smarter than that. When his forces took a shipyard, they didn't blow it up. They seized it intact and started building ships for the Sith fleet. When they captured factories, those factories kept running under new management. Every resource Revan captured made him stronger. The Republic was basically funding its own defeat. His strategy went beyond just taking territory. Revan systematically cut the Republic's supply lines and communication routes. Planets got isolated from each other. Fleets couldn't coordinate. Messages took weeks to get through instead of hours. The confusion alone was almost as effective as the actual fighting. And Revan's reputation did half the work for him. Once word spread about his tactical genius, systems started surrendering before the Sith even arrived. Local governors figured resistance was pointless. Why lose everything fighting when you could negotiate terms and maybe keep something? Revan's legend became a weapon all by itself. The Republic military was in bad shape. They'd spent years rebuilding after the Mandalorian Wars, and they still weren't ready for this. Task forces got wiped out in opening engagements. Officers who should have been leading the defense were defecting to the enemy. The coordination that makes a navy effective just wasn't there. The Sith pushed toward the core worlds from multiple directions at once. For the first time in centuries, Coruscant itself felt threatened. Politicians started talking about evacuation plans. Citizens wondered if the Republic was actually going to fall. It looked like Revan might actually pull it off. But the Republic wasn't dead yet. Some defensive actions managed to slow the Sith advance. When Revan's forces seized major worlds like Corellia, Duro, and Balassa, they ended up trapped in pockets. The Republic contained them before they could push further toward the core. Sith commanders tried to break out but ran into determined resistance. Battles at Comenor, Danon, and Devaron proved the Sith could be stopped. These weren't huge victories that turned the war around. They were small wins that kept hope alive. They showed Republic soldiers that Revan's forces could bleed just like anyone else. These defensive successes bought the Republic something they desperately needed: time. Time to regroup scattered forces, time to fortify critical systems, time to figure out how to actually fight back against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. And the Republic had one advantage Revan hadn't counted on. Her name was Bastila Shan. Bastila was a young Jedi Knight with a gift so rare that most Jedi went their whole lives without seeing it. She had battle meditation. This wasn't just some mind trick or combat skill. Battle meditation let her influence entire battles through the Force. When Bastila focused her power on a fight, Republic soldiers felt braver, sharper, more coordinated. Their shots hit more often. Their tactics worked better. Meanwhile, Sith forces on the receiving end started making mistakes. Doubt crept into their minds. Their formation fell apart. By the second year of the war, Bastila had become the Republic's secret weapon. She wasn't leading armies or commanding fleets. She'd just sit in meditation during battles and use the Force to tip the scales. Engagements that should have been losses turned into narrow wins. Fleets that were outnumbered managed to hold their ground. Officers started requesting Bastila's presence before major operations because her battle meditation made that much difference. The Sith noticed. Revan's conquests started stalling out. Battles that should have been easy victories turned into slugging matches. His forces were still winning more than they lost, but the momentum was slowing down. Something was interfering with his carefully planned campaigns. Intelligence reports eventually figured out the problem. One Jedi with a rare gift was single-handedly keeping the Republic in the fight. The Sith made a decision. Bastila Shan had to die. Or better yet, she had to be captured and turned to their side. If they could eliminate her battle meditation or flip it to serve the Sith, the war would be over. Finding one Jedi in a galaxy at war wouldn't be easy, but Revan had resources and patience. He started hunting for Bastila Shan while continuing his campaigns across Republic space. The race was on. Could the Republic protect their greatest asset? Or would the Sith eliminate the one thing keeping hope alive? The Jedi Council made a choice that would change everything. If they couldn't beat Revan, they'd have to capture him. By the war's second year, it was clear the Republic couldn't win through normal means. Revan was too smart, too powerful, and had too many resources. The Council realized their only shot was taking out the head of the snake. But they didn't want to end Revan. They wanted him alive. The Jedi needed to know where his endless fleet of ships came from. What was the source of his power? How was he building so many warships so fast? Capturing Revan meant getting answers that could turn the entire war around. They came up with a plan that was either brilliant or insane. Bastila Shan would lead a strike team of Jedi straight onto Revan's flagship during a battle. Her battle meditation would help create the opening they needed. The Republic Navy would deliberately provoke Revan into a large fleet engagement, giving the commandos cover to slip aboard his ship in the chaos. It was a suicide mission dressed up as strategy, but it was the best shot they had. The trap was set. Republic ships engaged the Sith fleet, and Revan took the bait. His flagship moved to the front of the battle, directing his forces like always. Bastila and her team used the confusion to infiltrate the vessel, fighting their way through corridors filled with Sith troops. They reached the bridge where Darth Revan commanded his empire. Lightsabers ignited. The Jedi confronted the Dark Lord in his own throne room. This was it. Everything came down to this moment. If they could subdue Revan, they might actually win the war. Then Darth Malak decided to change the game. Malak had been Revan's apprentice and friend for years. They'd fought together, fallen together, conquered together, but Malak saw an opportunity he couldn't pass up. With Jedi attacking Revan on the bridge, his master was vulnerable. Malak could become the new Dark Lord. All he had to do was pull the trigger. He ordered his gunners to fire on Revan's flagship, his own master's ship, while Revan was still on board. Turbo laser fire ripped through the hull. Explosions tore through the bridge. Crew members died instantly. Even the Jedi strike team got caught in the blast. Malak didn't care who he destroyed as long as Revan went down. It was the most brutal betrayal imaginable. Even by Sith standards, this was cold. The bridge turned into an inferno. Metal twisted and atmosphere vented into space. Revan was struck down in the chaos, his body broken by the explosions. The most powerful Sith Lord in the galaxy was suddenly fighting just to stay alive. Malak watched from his own ship and assumed Revan was dead. Good enough. He immediately declared himself the new Dark Lord of the Sith and took command of the entire empire. The transition of power took all of 5 minutes. His only disappointment was that Bastila Shan had probably survived the attack too, but he'd deal with her later. On the ruined bridge, Bastila pulled herself from the wreckage. Smoke filled what was left of the command center. Bodies lay everywhere. The mission had gone sideways in the worst possible way. Then she sensed something, a flicker of life in the Force. Revan was alive, barely. His mind was shattered and his body was failing. But he hadn't died yet. Bastila made a split-second decision that would haunt the Jedi Council for years. She reached out with the Force and stabilized what was left of Revan's consciousness. Her healing abilities kept his brain from shutting down completely. She couldn't fix the damage, but she could keep him from slipping away entirely. Her team grabbed the comatose body of Darth Revan and fought their way off the dying flagship. They made it to their escape ship as Revan's vessel broke apart behind them. Republic forces covered their retreat as they jumped to hyperspace. Bastila had Revan wrapped in a Force healing trance, doing everything she could to keep him alive during the trip. Their destination was the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine. If anyone could save Revan, it would be the Masters there. When they arrived, the Council faced an impossible situation. The galaxy's most dangerous Sith Lord was lying unconscious in their medical bay. He was gravely wounded, his memories scrambled, his mind barely holding together. They could have let him die. It would have been the easier choice. But the Jedi needed what he knew. They needed to understand his plans, his resources, the source of his power. So they made another choice that would change everything. The war had just taken its strangest turn yet. Darth Revan was in Jedi custody. Darth Malak had seized control of the Sith Empire through treachery, and Bastila Shan had formed a Force bond with the Dark Lord she'd saved, linking their destinies in ways nobody could predict. The Jedi Civil War was about to get even more complicated. The Jedi Council looked at the broken body of Darth Revan and made a decision that would haunt them forever. They were going to rebuild him from scratch. Revan knew secrets the Republic desperately needed. Where was the Star Forge? How was he building unlimited ships? What were his long-term plans? The answers were locked somewhere in his shattered mind. The Council could have executed him. They could have imprisoned him. Instead, they chose something way more controversial. They were going to reprogram him. The Jedi Masters healed Revan's body first. That part was straightforward. But his mind was another problem entirely. The battle had scrambled his memories and nearly destroyed his consciousness. Bastila's Force healing had kept him alive, but what remained was fragmented and unstable. The Council saw an opportunity in that damage. They used the Force to wipe away what was left of Revan's identity. Every memory of being a Sith Lord, gone. Every plan for galactic conquest, erased. His entire past was stripped away like peeling layers off a wall until nothing remained. Then they gave him a new identity. When Revan woke up, he had no idea who he was, no memory of his name, his past, or anything he'd done. The most powerful Sith Lord in the galaxy had become a blank slate. The Jedi filled that blank space with a cover story and a new personality loyal to the light side. Only a handful of Masters knew the truth. Vandar, Vrook, and Jar kept the secret locked tight. To everyone else, including Revan himself, Darth Revan had died on that exploding flagship. The Council's plan was risky and maybe even cruel, but they were desperate. The Jedi gave him the identity of a Republic ensign and assigned him to serve aboard a ship called the Endar Spire. Just another soldier in the Republic Navy. Nothing special about him at all, except he'd be serving under Bastila Shan's command. This wasn't random. Bastila had saved Revan's life using force healing, and that created a connection between them. A force bond that linked their minds in subtle ways. The Council hoped this bond might shake loose some of Revan's buried memories without him realizing what was happening. If fragments of his past surfaced, if he remembered anything about the Star Forge, he might unknowingly lead them straight to it. So Revan joined the war effort, the same war he'd started, fighting against the same Sith empire he'd built, and he had absolutely no idea. Bastila watched him carefully. So did the few other Jedi who knew the truth. They were looking for any sign that his memories might return, any hint that the former Dark Lord was still lurking somewhere beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Revan just thought he was doing his duty as a Republic soldier. It was one of the strangest gambles in the history of the Jedi Order. They'd taken their greatest enemy, erased who he was, and turned him into an unwitting agent working for them. If it worked, they'd find the Star Forge and end the war. If it failed, they'd unleashed something they couldn't control. But the Council didn't have better options. The Republic was still losing. Malak had taken over the Sith Empire, and somehow he was even more aggressive than Revan had been. Malak didn't have Revan's strategic brilliance. What he had was raw brutality and unlimited ships from the Star Forge. He threw wave after wave of forces at Republic defenses, grinding them down through sheer numbers. And Malak had become obsessed with two things. First, he wanted to find and destroy Bastila Shan. Her battle meditation was the only thing keeping the Republic in the fight. Destroy her or capture her, and the war was over. Malak sent his best hunters after her. Second, Malak wanted Bastila turned to the dark side. If he could corrupt her and twist her battle meditation to serve the Sith, the Republic fleet would crumble. Their own secret weapon would become their worst nightmare. Malak spent as much time planning Bastila's conversion as he did planning military campaigns. So the stage was set for something nobody expected. Revan, the amnesiac former Sith Lord, serving alongside Bastila Shan, the Jedi he was force bonded to. Both of them being hunted by Malak, who wanted one dead and the other corrupted. The Jedi Council gambling that Revan's buried memories would lead them to the Star Forge before Malak could eliminate Bastila. The entire war now centered on these three people. A Dark Lord who didn't know who he was, a Jedi with battle meditation who'd saved her enemy's life, and a betrayer who wanted them both destroyed. Everything that happened next would come down to whether Revan's memories stayed buried or came flooding back. Whether Bastila could resist corruption if Malak captured her. Whether the Jedi Council's desperate gamble would save the Republic or doom it. The Jedi Civil War had become personal in ways nobody could have predicted, and the Republic's fate was now tied to the mind of the man who'd tried to conquer it. Darth Malak was everything Revan wasn't, and that made him so much worse. Revan had been calculating, strategic. He conquered worlds, but kept them intact because he needed the resources. Malak didn't care about any of that. He ruled through pure terror and brutality. Where Revan used precision strikes, Malak used overwhelming force. Where Revan tried to win hearts and minds, Malak just broke everything until people submitted. His message to the galaxy was simple: obey or die. The shift happened almost immediately after Malak seized power. Sith forces that had been carefully capturing infrastructure started destroying it instead. Planets that refused to surrender faced total annihilation. Malak wanted everyone to know what happened when you resisted him. He needed to make an example, show the galaxy that the new Dark Lord was not to be tested. So he picked Telos IV. Telos was a successful Republic world with thriving cities and a strong economy. It was also the home of a Republic war hero named Carth Onasi. Malak knew exactly what he was doing when he targeted it. Admiral Saul Karath led the assault. Karath had defected from the Republic early in the war and now served as one of Malak's top commanders. He took a Sith fleet to Telos in 3958 and gave the planetary government one chance to surrender. They refused. Karath followed his orders. The Sith fleet moved into bombardment position and opened fire. Turbo-laser batteries lit up the sky. Blast after blast rained down from orbit without stopping. Cities that had stood for centuries vanished in balls of fire. Forests burned. Oceans boiled. The atmosphere itself turned toxic from the sheer amount of destruction. The bombardment went on for hours. By the time Karath's ships stopped firing, Telos IV was dead. Millions of people were ended. Entire families wiped out in seconds. Among the dead were Carth Onasi's wife and young son. The hero who'd fought in the Mandalorian Wars and stayed loyal to the Republic lost everything he cared about because Malak wanted to send a message. Telos became a wasteland, a toxic graveyard floating in space as a warning to anyone thinking about resistance. The destruction shocked the galaxy. Even by war standards, this was excessive. Revan had been ruthless, but he'd never ordered anything like this. Malak had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And it worked, at least partially. Worlds across the Republic suddenly became a lot more willing to negotiate with the Sith. The fear was real. If Malak would do this to a prosperous core world, what would he do to border systems with weaker defenses? Surrender rates jumped. Resistance movements lost steam. Terror was an effective tool. But the bombing also had an opposite effect. Republic forces that might have given up instead found new motivation. Outrage turned into determination. Soldiers who'd been fighting because it was their duty now fought because they wanted revenge. Telos became a rallying cry. Remember what the Sith did. Remember what happens if we lose. Malak's own followers started having doubts. Some of the Sith who'd followed Revan into darkness had done so because they believed in his vision of a stronger galaxy. They'd convinced themselves the conquest served a purpose. But this? Destroying entire worlds just to make a point? That wasn't strategy. That was just cruelty. A few Sith officers quietly questioned whether they'd made the right choice. Those who spoke too loudly about it got executed. Malak didn't tolerate dissent. His empire held together because everyone was terrified of him. Cross the Dark Lord and you'd end up like Telos. Fear kept the Sith unified. But it also meant Malak was building his power on an unstable foundation. Loyalty based on terror only lasts until someone stronger comes along. While planets burned, Malak became obsessed with one specific target, Bastila Shan. He'd figured out that her battle meditation was keeping the Republic afloat. Every time his forces should have won easily, Bastila's power tipped the scales just enough to make it a fair fight. She was the reason his fleets couldn't achieve total victory despite having superior numbers. Malak wanted her eliminated, but more than that, he wanted to turn her. If he could corrupt Bastila and twist her battle meditation to serve the Sith, the war would end overnight. Republic forces would lose their edge while the Sith gained an unstoppable advantage. Malak spent resources hunting for Bastila that he could have used for military campaigns. She became his primary objective. Intelligence reports tracked her movements. Spies infiltrated Republic command structures looking for information. Every time Bastila participated in a battle, Malak's analysts tried to predict where she'd go next. Eventually, they got a hit. Bastila was aboard a Republic ship called the Endar Spire. Malak's forces tracked it to a city world named Taris. This was his chance. If he could capture or destroy Bastila here, the Republic's last real advantage would disappear. Malak prepared a trap. He'd blockade Taris and tear the planet apart if necessary to get to her. After what he'd done to Telos, everyone knew he'd follow through on that threat. The hunt for Bastila Shan was about to turn Taris into the war's next disaster, and neither Malak nor the Republic knew that an amnesiac Revan was serving on the same ship, about to walk right into the middle of it all. Malak found Bastila. Then he destroyed an entire planet trying to end her. In early 3956 BBY, Sith intelligence tracked the Endar Spire to Taris. The city world was perfect for an ambush. Crowded, chaotic, easy to lock down. Malak's fleet dropped out of hyperspace and immediately opened fire. The Endar Spire never stood a chance. Sith warships tore into the Republic cruiser with concentrated fire. The ship's hull buckled under the assault. Systems failed. The order came to abandon ship. Bastila and the surviving crew scrambled for escape pods as the vessel broke apart around them. Revan was on that ship too, though he still had no idea who he really was. He grabbed an escape pod with Karth Onasi, a Republic pilot who'd lost everything at Telos. They launched just as the Endar Spire exploded behind them. Escape pods rained down on Taris like falling stars. Bastila made it to the surface alive, along with a handful of other survivors scattered across the city. The Sith immediately threw a blockade around the entire planet. Nobody was getting off Taris without authorization. Malak positioned his fleet in orbit and activated auto-targeting turrets. Any ship that tried to leave got shot down automatically. Meanwhile, Sith troops landed and took control of the upper city. They set up checkpoints, imposed martial law, and started searching for Bastila. The hunt was on. Malak's soldiers scoured the wealthy districts while enlisting local gangs to search the lower levels. The Sith offered rewards for information, threatened anyone who helped Republic survivors. Taris turned into a police state overnight. For weeks, the city lived under occupation while Malak's forces tore it apart looking for one Jedi. Down in the lower city, Revan and Karth were trying to stay alive and figure out what happened to Bastila. They had no resources, no backup, and no idea how to escape a planet locked down by an entire Sith fleet. So they did what desperate people do. They made deals with criminals. Revan worked with street gangs, smugglers, and whoever else could help. Along the way, his group picked up some unusual allies. Mission Vow, a teenage Twi'lek who knew the lower city like her own hand. Zalbar, a Wookiee warrior with a life debt. T3M4, an astromech droid that could slice any security system. And Kandaros Ordo, a Mandalorian mercenary who'd fought for Mandalore during the last war. This ragtag crew of misfits became Revan's team. Eventually, they found Bastila. She'd been captured by a crime lord and was being held in the lower city. Revan had to win a swoop bike race to get close enough to rescue her. High-speed racing through dangerous tunnels while Sith patrols searched every block. Just another day in the life of someone who used to conquer the galaxy. They freed Bastila and now faced an impossible problem. How do you escape a blockaded planet? The answer came from one of Taris's biggest crime bosses. David Kang owned a heavily modified freighter called the Ebon Hawk, fast enough to break through a blockade if you had the guts to try. Revan's crew infiltrated Kang's compound, fought through his guards, and stole the ship. They had their escape route. Now they just needed to use it before Malak lost patience. Up in orbit, Malak was getting furious. Weeks of searching and his troops still hadn't found Bastila. The longer this went on, the more it looked like the mighty Sith Empire couldn't capture one Jedi in a city they controlled. That was unacceptable. Malak made a decision that shocked even his own officers. He ordered Admiral Karath to bombard Taris from orbit. Destroy the entire surface. Destroy everyone on the planet. If he couldn't capture Bastila, he'd make sure she died along with everyone else. Karath hesitated. He'd carried out the attack on Telos, but that had been different. Telos refused to surrender. Taris was already occupied by Sith forces. This was just destroying a planet because Malak was angry. But orders were orders. Karath started repositioning his fleet for bombardment. The operation would take hours to set up properly. They needed to coordinate firing solutions for every capital ship to ensure complete coverage. Down on Taris, Revan had no idea what was coming. His team loaded onto the Ebon Hawk and prepared for takeoff. They'd have to blast through the blockade, dodge Sith fighters, and hope they got lucky. The ship lifted off just as the first turbolaser strikes hit the surface. Karath's fleet had finished positioning. The bombardment began. Turbolaser batteries from dozens of capital ships fired in unison. The sky turned red as energy beams lanced down from orbit. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years exploded. Entire city blocks vanished in fireballs. The destruction spread faster than people could run. Upper city, lower city, under city, it didn't matter. Everything burned. The Ebon Hawk raced toward space through falling debris and laser fire. Revan pushed the ship harder than it was designed to go. Sith fighters pursued, but couldn't match the freighter's speed. Turret fire from the blockade ships came so close it scorched the hull. They broke through by seconds. Behind them, Taris died. The bombardment continued for hours. Millions of people were ended. Families, children, anyone who couldn't escape. The towering cityscape that covered the entire planet was reduced to smoking rubble. The atmosphere turned into a toxic soup of ash and chemicals. When Karath's fleet finally stopped firing, Taris was gone. A once vibrant world turned into a lifeless wasteland. The galaxy was horrified. Telos had been terrible, but this was worse. Malak hadn't even pretended there was a military reason. He'd destroyed Taris purely out of spite because Bastila got away. It was one of the worst atrocities of the entire war, the kind of crime that gets remembered forever. And for all that death and destruction, Malak's plan failed. Bastila Shan escaped on the Ebon Hawk with Revan and the others. The Jedi he'd tried to destroy was still alive and still using battle meditation to help the Republic. Malak had turned an entire planet into a graveyard for nothing. The Ebon Hawk limped away from Taris carrying survivors and secrets. Nobody on board knew that the Republic's last hope was sitting in the cockpit with no memory of starting this war. After the horror of watching Taris burn, the crew needed somewhere safe to regroup. Bastila set course for Dantooine. The Jedi enclave there was one of the few places in the galaxy where they might catch their breath. When they arrived, Bastila brought Revan before the Jedi Council. Masters Vandar, Vrook, and Jar studied this Republic soldier who'd helped rescue one of their most valuable knights. They sensed something unusual about him. The Force was incredibly strong in this man. The Council made a decision that seemed generous, but was actually calculated. They'd train him as a Jedi Padawan. Of course, they already knew exactly who he was. They'd wiped his mind and given him this new identity. But to everyone else, including Revan himself, this was just the Council recognizing potential in a brave soldier. Over the next few weeks, Revan learned to be a Jedi all over again. Meditation techniques, lightsaber forms, the philosophy of the light side. Everything he'd known and then forgotten came back piece by piece. Except now it felt new, like discovering these truths for the first time. During training, something strange started happening. Revan began having visions. Flashes of memory that didn't match his cover story, images of ancient ruins and alien technology. In these visions, he saw himself alongside another man exploring Dantooine's plains. The other man looked familiar somehow, though Revan couldn't place him. Bastila experienced the visions too through their Force bond. She saw what Revan saw, felt what he felt. The bond linked them in ways that went beyond normal Jedi connections. The Council recognized what was happening. Revan's buried memories were trying to surface. The visions showed him and Malak searching for something important on Dantooine years ago. Something connected to the Star Forge. The Masters decided to follow where the visions led. They sent Revan, Bastila, and the others to investigate ancient ruins in the grasslands outside the Enclave. The group tracked down the location from Revan's fragmented memories. Deep underground, they found exactly what the visions had shown: a star map. The ancient Rakatan device activated when Revan approached, recognizing him somehow. A holographic display lit up the chamber, showing star charts and coordinates. The map revealed that 4 other fragments existed on different worlds. Find them all, and you'd have the location of the Star Forge. This was the breakthrough the Republic needed. The Council finally understood where Malak's unlimited ships came from. The Star Forge was real. It was out there, and these star maps were the key to finding it. Destroy the Star Forge, and the Sith war machine would collapse. They gave Revan and his crew a mission. Travel to the worlds indicated by the map. Find the other fragments. Locate the Star Forge. End this war. Revan accepted without hesitation. He had no idea he was literally retracing steps he'd taken as a Sith Lord. To him, this was a chance to serve the Republic and help end the suffering. The irony was lost on everyone except the Council members who knew the truth. The Ebon Hawk departed Dantooine with a purpose now. They had coordinates for Tatooine, Manaan, and Korriban. 4 worlds holding pieces of an ancient puzzle. But Revan wasn't going alone. His crew had grown into something special. Bastila Shan represented the Jedi, though her growing feelings for Revan complicated her role as his keeper. Karth Onasi flew the ship and provided military expertise, even while struggling to trust a man whose past was clearly being hidden. Mission Vao and Zalbar brought street smarts and raw strength. The teenage Twi'lek and her Wookiee best friend had survived Taris's lower city, which meant they could handle anything. T3M4 could hack any computer system and repair the ship when things inevitably broke. The little droid had more personality than most organics. On Tatooine, they picked up HK-47, an assassin droid with a disturbing enthusiasm for violence and a habit of calling everyone meatbags. HK was mysterious, deadly, and had gaps in his own memory that mirrored Revan's situation. Canderous Ordo represented the Mandalorian perspective. He'd fought against the Republic in the last war and had nothing but respect for the warrior who'd defeated Mandalore. Canderous didn't know that Warrior was sitting next to him in the Hawk's common room. Later, on Kashyyyk, they'd meet Joli Bindo, an old Jedi hermit who'd left the Order decades ago and had opinions about everything. Joli would join because he sensed something important was happening and wanted to see how it played out. This crew was a weird mix of personalities and backgrounds, Jedi and Mandalorian, soldier and criminal, droids and Force users. They argued constantly and trusted each other completely. Together, they represented everything Revan had tried to conquer. Now, they were united to stop the empire he'd built. The Ebon Hawk jumped to hyperspace, heading for their first destination. Ahead lay ancient ruins, deadly trials, and secrets that would test everything Revan thought he knew about himself. The hunt for the star maps had begun, and with it, a race against time. Malak was still out there, still hunting Bastila, still conquering worlds with his endless fleet. Find the Star Forge first, and the Republic survives. Fail, and Malak wins everything. No pressure. Four worlds, four ancient maps, one chance to end the war. The hunt took Revan and his crew across the galaxy to places that were dangerous even before you factored in looking for Rakatan artifacts. Each star map was hidden somewhere that guaranteed nobody would find it by accident. First stop was Tatooine. The desert planet was a wasteland of sand, crime, and things trying to destroy you. The star map was supposedly buried somewhere in the eastern Dune Sea, which meant dealing with the local problems first. Chirka Corporation was having a war with the native Sand people, mining operations versus tribal territories. The usual mess of colonizers not respecting indigenous populations. Revan negotiated a truce between them, earning enough trust from the Sand people's chieftain to get directions. Those directions led to a cave currently occupied by a Krayt dragon. These things are massive. Think the size of a small building with teeth that can bite through starship hull plating. The dragon had made its home right where Revan needed to go, so the crew did what you do when a giant monster blocks your path. They destroyed it. The fight was brutal. The beast nearly ate half the team before they brought it down. But once it was dead, they had access to the cave system it had been guarding. Deep inside, they found the second star map. The hologram activated and added its data to what they'd found on Dantooine. 2 pieces down, 3 to go. Next was Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld. Zalbar had a complicated history there, involving family drama and political disputes. The crew helped sort out a civil conflict among the Wookiees, which opened doors that would have stayed shut otherwise. With Wookiee gratitude came Wookiee cooperation. They ventured into the Shadowlands, the dangerous forest floor where most Wookiees never go. Down there, in the perpetual twilight, they met Joli Bindo. Joli was an old Jedi who'd left the Order decades ago. He lived alone in a hut surrounded by dangerous creatures and didn't seem interested in rejoining the war effort. But when he learned what Revan was searching for, something changed his mind. He led them to an ancient Rakatan computer terminal hidden in the forest. The primitive AI tested Revan with questions and challenges. When Revan passed, the computer recognized him as an authorized user. That should have been impossible. Revan had no memory of ever being here before, but his body remembered what his mind had forgotten. The third star map revealed itself, rising from the forest floor like it had been waiting for him. Jolee decided to join the crew after that. He said he had a feeling about where this was all heading and wanted to see it through. The ocean world of Manon came next. Manon was neutral territory. The native Selkath stayed out of the war and supplied healing kolto to both sides. That meant both Republic and Sith had a presence there, eyeing each other suspiciously while pretending to respect Selkath law. Revan had to play politics carefully. The star map was underwater in a research facility that had gone silent. He dove to the seafloor to investigate and discovered the station had a problem. A giant Firaxan shark worshipped by the Selkath as a sacred creature had taken up residence. Revan dealt with the shark without ending it, respecting the local beliefs. The creature calmed and left the area. Inside the facility, the fourth star map waited in a flooded chamber. Recovery brought Revan closer to his goal, but also attracted attention. Both Sith and Selkath authorities noticed someone was poking around their waters asking questions about ancient technology. The crew left Manon before things got complicated. One star map remained, and it was on the worst possible planet. Korriban, the Sith homeworld. This was where Revan and Malak had rebuilt the old Sith Academy, where Dark Jedi trained in tombs filled with centuries of accumulated dark side energy. Walking onto Korriban as a Jedi was basically suicide. So Revan didn't walk in as a Jedi. The crew disguised themselves as prospective Sith students. They played the part, navigating academy politics and pretending to embrace dark side philosophy. Other students were competing for favor with the instructors, willing to betray or destroy each other for advancement. Revan fit right in, which should have felt wrong but somehow didn't. The Academy sent students into the Valley of the Dark Lords for trials, ancient tombs where Sith from thousands of years ago were buried. Each tomb was a death trap filled with guardian droids, dark force ghosts, and worse things. Revan entered the tomb of Naga Sadow, one of the most powerful ancient Sith lords. He fought through the defenses and solved the tomb's puzzles. At the heart of it, the final star map waited. When it activated, all 5 pieces came together. The complete coordinates appeared in holographic space. The Star Forge orbited a planet called Lihon in the Rakata system, the unknown world, the birthplace of the species that built these maps tens of thousands of years ago. Revan finally knew where to go, but so did the Sith. By now, Malak's intelligence network had noticed someone was collecting star maps across the galaxy. The same maps he and Revan had found years ago. Someone was following their trail, which meant someone was hunting for the Star Forge. Malak wasn't about to let that happen. He'd already lost Bastila once at Taris. He wasn't losing the Star Forge too. The Dark Lord prepared a trap for whoever was bold enough to come looking. The race was almost over. Revan had all the coordinates. Now he just had to get to Lehon before Malak could stop him. While Revan was hunting for star maps, Malak was hunting for revenge. The Dark Lord's intelligence network had been tracking the Ebonhawk's movements across the galaxy. Someone was collecting star maps. Someone who'd started their journey from the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine. That meant the Jedi Council was behind this operation. Malak saw an opportunity to chop two birds with one turbolaser strike. He'd already failed to capture Bastila at Taris, failed to stop whoever was gathering the maps. But he could hurt the Jedi Order badly enough that it might never recover. Take out their last major sanctuary and scatter the survivors. Cut off whatever support network was helping this mystery team. Plus, it felt good to make the Jedi pay for defying him. Malak sent a Sith fleet to Dantooine with simple orders. Destroy the Enclave, destroy everyone inside. Make sure nothing was left standing. The attack came without warning. Sith warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately opened fire on the peaceful agricultural world. The Enclave wasn't a military target. It was a training ground for Jedi younglings, a repository of ancient knowledge, a place of meditation and learning. None of that mattered to Malak. Turbolaser fire hammered the Enclave's walls. The ancient stone that had stood for centuries cracked and crumbled under the assault. Before the Jedi inside could organize a defense, Sith troopers and Dark Jedi were already landing. They swept through the halls like a plague. Masters who dedicated their lives to peace found themselves fighting for survival against former students who'd fallen to darkness. Padawans barely old enough to build their first lightsaber tried to defend their teachers. The Enclave's defenders were outnumbered, outgunned, and caught completely off guard. It was a massacre. Jedi Masters fell defending the archives. Padawans died trying to evacuate the younglings. The few knights who managed to mount any resistance were overwhelmed by waves of Sith attackers. Dark Jedi who'd once walked these same halls now burned them to the ground. Master Vandar Tokare survived by pure luck. He'd been in a meditation chamber when the attack began and managed to escape through forgotten tunnels beneath the Enclave. A handful of council members fled with him, scattering to different safe houses across the galaxy, but most weren't so fortunate. By the time the assault ended, the Dantooine Enclave was nothing but smoking ruins. Bodies lay in corridors that had echoed with lessons about peace and understanding. The library where thousands of years of Jedi knowledge had been stored was reduced to ash. The last major gathering place for the Jedi Order was gone. This wasn't just a military victory for Malak, it was a symbolic one. The Jedi Council that had guided the Order through countless crises was effectively destroyed. The few survivors were in hiding, unable to coordinate or lead. The Jedi Order had become a scattered handful of individuals with no direction and no home. Malak's strike did exactly what he wanted. The Jedi were reeling, leaderless, and nearly broken. In the Force, the dark side felt stronger than it had in generations. The Sith were unopposed and growing bolder. The Republic lost more than just a Jedi temple. They lost a symbol of hope. Meanwhile, Revan and his crew were still out there collecting star maps, unaware that their home base had been destroyed. They were hopping from world to world, fighting through ancient ruins and solving Rakatan puzzles. When they finally returned to Dantooine after gathering most of the maps, the devastation hit like a physical blow. The Ebon Hawk landed in fields that were still smoldering. Where the proud Enclave had stood, only broken walls remained. The crew walked through halls they'd passed through weeks ago, now collapsed and burned. Bodies of Jedi they'd spoken with lay buried in rubble. The silence was worse than any battlefield. This had been a place of life and learning. Now, it was a tomb. Bastila stood in what used to be the council chambers, staring at the destruction. The masters who'd trained her, who'd given Revan his mission, were either dead or scattered to the wind. The order she'd dedicated her life to was falling apart. Karth found personal items in the ruins, things that belonged to people he'd known, reminders that every pile of rubble had been someone's home, someone's life. Even Canderous, who'd fought against the Republic, seemed affected. Destroying military targets was one thing. This was just cruelty for its own sake. The message was clear. Malak would destroy anything and anyone to win. He'd already annihilated Telos and Taris. Now he'd taken out the Jedi's last sanctuary. If he found the Starforge's location before Revan did, there'd be no stopping him. The discovery hardened Revan's resolve. Every minute wasted meant more worlds like Dantooine, more cities like Taris, more people dying because Malak had unlimited ships and no conscience. They had the star map coordinates now. They knew where the Starforge was. The time for searching was over. The crew returned to the Ebon Hawk in silence. Bastila took one last look at the ruins of the Enclave before boarding. This place had been her home. Now it was just another casualty of Malak's war. As they lifted off, Revan made a quiet promise. This ended at the Starforge. One way or another, Malak's reign of terror stopped there. The Jedi Order was broken. The Republic was hanging by a thread. Everything now depended on a crew of misfits and a man who didn't know he'd started this war. The Ebon Hawk jumped to hyperspace heading for the Lehon system. They had all the star map coordinates. The Starforge was within reach. Everything was going according to plan. Then they got yanked out of hyperspace by a massive gravity well. Admiral Saul Karath had been waiting. His flagship, the Leviathan, was one of the biggest warships in the Sith fleet. An interdictor cruiser pulled the Ebon Hawk out of its jump like a fish on a hook. Before the crew could react, tractor beams locked on and dragged them into the Leviathan's hangar. They were caught. Sith troops swarmed the ship. Revan, Bastila, and Karth were hauled off to interrogation, while the rest of the crew got thrown in holding cells. Karath wanted information about the star maps, and he wasn't gentle about asking. But the crew didn't get this far by giving up easily. While Karath was focused on the main prisoners, other team members staged a breakout. They fought through the ship, freeing Revan and the others along the way. The Leviathan was enormous. Corridors filled with Sith troops, security systems everywhere. But Revan's team cut through it all like they'd been doing this their whole lives, which in Revan's case, he had. His body remembered tactics his mind had forgotten. They fought their way to the bridge where Karath commanded his flagship. Karth had personal business with Karath. This was the man who'd bombarded Telos and ended his family. The man who'd betrayed the Republic and served Malak without question. Karth wanted answers and revenge in equal measure. The fight on the bridge was brutal. Karth was a skilled officer and not about to go down easy. But Revan and his team were better. When Karth finally fell, mortally wounded, he had one last bit of cruelty to deliver. He looked at Karth and smiled. Then he dropped the bomb. The Jedi standing next to him wasn't just some Republic soldier. That was Darth Revan, the Dark Lord who'd started this whole war. The man responsible for Telos, for the fleet that destroyed millions, for everything Karth had lost. The Jedi Council had wiped his memory and turned him into a weapon. Karth's world shattered. He'd been flying missions with the man who'd destroyed his life, fighting beside the enemy who'd taken everything from him. The betrayal cut deeper than any lightsaber could. Revan stood there, stunned. That couldn't be true. It was a lie meant to divide them. Except Bastila's face told him it wasn't a lie. Before anyone could process what Karath had said, the situation got worse. Darth Malak walked onto the bridge. The Dark Lord had been waiting for this moment. He'd known the Leviathan would catch whoever was collecting the star maps. Now he stood face to face with the man who used to be his master. Malak didn't waste time with small talk. He laid it all out for Revan. You were Darth Revan. You conquered half the galaxy. You and I fell to the dark side together. Then I betrayed you, and the Jedi found your broken body. They erased who you were and created a new person, used you like a tool to find the Star Forge. Everything Malak said matched up with fragments Revan had been remembering. The visions, the way ancient Rakatan computers recognized him, how he'd known things he shouldn't have known. It all made horrible sense. The memories came flooding back. Being Revan, building the Sith Empire, conquering worlds, the power, the certainty that he was doing what needed to be done. All of it crashed into his consciousness at once like a tidal wave. Malak expected this to break him, expected Revan to either go mad or return to the dark side. Here was the proof that the Jedi had used him, lied to him, robbed him of everything he was. But something unexpected happened. Revan didn't break. He'd spent months living as someone else, learning the light side again, fighting alongside people who genuinely cared about each other. The man he'd become over those months was real, even if the memories were fake. He had a choice: return to being the Dark Lord Malak remembered, or stay the person he'd chosen to become. Revan chose to stay in the light. Malak was furious. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. His former master was supposed to either join him or collapse. Instead, Revan was standing there with a lightsaber ready to fight. Before they could duel, Bastila made her move. She positioned herself between Revan and Malak, told Revan and Karth to run, get back to the Ebonhawk and finish the mission. She'd hold Malak off as long as she could. It was a suicide play, and everyone knew it. Bastila was powerful, but Malak was a Dark Lord at the height of his strength. She couldn't win this fight, but she could buy time. Revan didn't want to leave her. The force bond between them screamed at him to stay. But Bastila was right. Someone had to get out and reach the Star Forge. If they all died here, Malak won everything. So Revan ran. Karth ran with him, though his mind was still reeling from learning who he'd been traveling with. The rest of the crew fought their way back to the Ebonhawk while Bastila dueled a Dark Lord alone. She lasted longer than Malak expected. Her skill and battle meditation techniques kept her alive through a fight that should have ended in seconds. But eventually, power won out. Malak disarmed her and knocked her unconscious. He didn't end her. He had better plans. The Ebonhawk blasted out of the hangar with Sith fighters on its tail. They escaped by the skin of their teeth, jumping to hyperspace before the Leviathan could lock on again. Inside the ship, silence. Nobody knew what to say. Karth stared at Revan like he was seeing him for the first time, which in a way he was. The man who'd destroyed his life was sitting in the cockpit. The Jedi Council had lied to all of them, used them as pawns in a scheme to exploit Revan's buried knowledge. Revan sat with his returned memories weighing on him. He remembered being the Dark Lord, remembered conquering worlds, remembered building the empire that was still tearing the galaxy apart. All those deaths were his responsibility, and Bastila was in Malak's hands, captured, alone, probably being tortured by now. The crew had escaped with their lives and the location of the Star Forge, but the cost was steep. Trust was shattered, identities were destroyed, and their most powerful ally was now a prisoner of the enemy. Everything had changed. The war was about to enter its final phase, and nothing would ever be simple again. Malak had Bastila exactly where he wanted her, alone, captured, and cut off from everyone who might help. Now he just had to break her. He kept her prisoner aboard the Star Forge for days. The station radiated dark side energy so thick you could feel it pressing against your mind. For a Jedi trying to resist corruption, it was the worst possible place to be held. Malak didn't start by trying to turn her. First, he made her suffer. Torture, physical pain to wear down her body, mental manipulation to attack her mind, hours of force lightning followed by hours of psychological games, sleep deprivation, isolation. Every technique the Sith had developed over thousands of years to break someone's will. Bastila held out longer than most would have. She was strong in the Force and trained to resist dark side influence. But strength has limits. Everyone breaks eventually if you push hard enough. Malak was patient. He had time, and he knew exactly where to push. He talked to her about the Jedi Council, about how they'd used Revan like a weapon, erased who he was and turned him into a tool. All those high-minded speeches about peace and justice, but when it mattered, the Council stooped to the same manipulation the Sith used. Weren't they angry about that? Didn't she feel used? Bastila tried not to listen, but the words found cracks in her defenses. She had been angry about what they did to Revan. The Council lied to all of them, put them in danger without telling them the full truth, used her Force bond with Revan to manipulate his memories. Malak kept digging at those doubts, kept offering a different path. Join him, use her power without the Jedi's restrictions. Stop sacrificing herself for people who saw her as just another tool. Take control instead of being controlled. After a week of torture and temptation, Bastila's resistance crumbled. The dark side flooded into the cracks Malak had created. Her anger at the Council, her fear of failing everyone, her despair over being captured, her rage at feeling helpless, all of it twisted together and pulled her down. She stopped fighting, stopped resisting, let the darkness in. Bastila Shan fell to the dark side and became Malak's new Sith apprentice. Malak was thrilled. He'd lost Darth Bandon earlier in the war. Now he had something better. A fallen Jedi with battle meditation, the rarest and most powerful Force ability in the galaxy. His plan was simple. Bastila would use her battle meditation to serve the Sith instead of the Republic. She'd boost his fleet to unstoppable levels while crushing the morale of Republic forces. With Bastila fighting for him, the war would end in total victory. Dark Bastila agreed. The person she'd been seemed like a distant memory. Weak, naive, always sacrificing herself for others who didn't appreciate it. This new version embraced power without apology. Though somewhere deep down, buried under layers of anger and pain, a part of her still screamed that this was wrong. Back on the Ebon Hawk, Revan felt Bastila's fall through their force bond. The connection between them transmitted her pain and transformation. It hit him like a physical blow. He'd failed her, left her to face Malak alone. Now she was lost to darkness because he hadn't been strong enough to save her. The crew expected Revan to fall apart. Learning you're actually the Dark Lord who started the war would shake anyone. Losing the woman you care about to the enemy would finish the job. But Revan surprised them. Instead of breaking, he doubled down, rejected the darkness even harder. The revelation about his past could have sent him spiraling back to being Darth Revan. Bastila's fall could have convinced him the light side couldn't win. He chose different, reconfirmed his commitment to the light side and the Republic. His companions watched this happen and slowly started to believe. Karth especially struggled with trusting Revan after learning the truth. This was the man who'd destroyed Telos, ended his family, started this entire nightmare. But the Revan he'd been traveling with wasn't that person anymore. The choice to stay in the light even after remembering everything, that meant something. Actions mattered more than history. One by one, the crew decided to keep following him. Mission and Zalbar had seen Revan risk his life for strangers. Jolee recognized genuine change when he saw it. Even Kandaros, who'd fought against the Republic, respected someone who owned their past and chose a new path. They rallied behind Revan because he'd earned it. Not because of who he used to be, but because of who he'd chosen to become. Revan now carried a weight few people could understand. He remembered being the Dark Lord. Remembered the decisions that led to millions of deaths. Every destroyed world, every fallen soldier. That blood was on his hands. But he also had the knowledge and strength to stop Malak. He knew how the Sith thought because he'd been their leader. He understood the Star Forge because he'd found it first. And he had one advantage Malak didn't expect. He genuinely wanted to save Bastila, not capture her or use her. Save her from the darkness he'd introduced her to. Destroying the Star Forge would end the war. Saving Bastila would redeem some of his past. Revan needed to do both. The Ebon Hawk set course for Lahon, the unknown world where the Star Forge waited. The crew prepared for the fight of their lives. Republic forces were being contacted and mobilized for a final assault. Everything came down to this. Revan would face his former apprentice who'd betrayed him, confront the woman he loved who'd fallen because of him, and destroy the weapon he'd once used to conquer the galaxy. The Jedi Civil War was approaching its end. One way or another, it would be decided at the Star Forge. The Ebon Hawk dropped out of hyperspace in the Lehon system and immediately knew something was wrong. A massive disruptor field surrounded the planet, jamming sensors and pulling ships down like a magnet. The freighter fought against the pull, but physics won. They crash-landed on the tropical surface of Lehon, also called Rakata Prime, the unknown world. The place where the Star Forge had been built tens of thousands of years ago. The ship was damaged, but everyone survived. Now they were stuck on an alien world that nobody from the Republic had visited in millennia. Lahon turned out to be inhabited. The Rakata still lived here, descendants of the species that built the Star Forge, except they weren't the advanced civilization that once ruled the galaxy. They'd devolved into primitive tribes after their empire collapsed. Two main groups controlled different parts of the island where Revan landed. The Elders were the more peaceful tribe. The other group was violent and hostile. Revan approached the elders carefully and managed to earn their trust through a combination of diplomacy and helping with their problems. The elders told him the story of the Star Forge. Their ancestors built it as the ultimate weapon, powered by stars and the dark side of the Force. It could create unlimited ships and war machines. For a time, the Rakata used it to conquer the galaxy. But the Star Forge corrupted them. The dark side energy it radiated twisted their minds and bodies. The Rakatan Empire tore itself apart in civil wars. The species lost its connection to the Force. Their technology failed. Everything they'd built came crashing down. The Star Forge had survived. It was still up there in orbit, still functional after all these thousands of years, still radiating dark side corruption, still capable of building unlimited fleets for whoever controlled it. Revan needed to reach it. But first, he had to deal with the disruptor field keeping ships grounded. The field originated from a massive structure the elders called the Temple of the Ancients, a pyramid the size of a mountain sitting in the middle of the island. Inside that temple was the control system for the disruptor field. Revan gathered his team and headed for the temple. The structure was ancient beyond measure. Stone corridors lit by technology that still worked after being abandoned for ages. Guardian droids activated as they entered, programmed thousands of years ago to defend against intruders. The crew fought through waves of these machines, blaster fire and lightsabers against relics that refused to die. The temple didn't want visitors. Deep inside, Revan felt a familiar presence through the Force. Bastila was here. She stepped out of the shadows wearing Sith robes. Her eyes reflected the corruption that had taken root. This wasn't the Jedi who'd saved his life. This was Darth Malak's apprentice, come to stop him from reaching the Star Forge. Bastila tried one more time to turn Revan back to the dark side, reminded him of the power he once wielded, the control, the certainty. He could reclaim all of it. Together, they could overthrow Malak and rule as the new Sith Lords. Revan refused, told her that wasn't who he was anymore, offered her a chance to come back to the light. She attacked instead. Their duel lit up the temple interior. Two Force users who knew each other's fighting styles intimately, connected by a bond that transmitted intent and emotion. They moved like mirror images, anticipating each other's moves. But Revan had something Bastila didn't. He'd been where she was, knew what the dark side felt like from the inside, understood the lies it told and the weakness it created beneath the surface strength. He won the duel without ending her, disarmed her, and backed her into a corner. Gave her one more chance to surrender and come with him. Bastila refused, used the Force to create a distraction, and fled the temple. She'd rejoin Malak on the Star Forge and prepare for the final battle. Revan let her go. He'd have another chance to save her. Right now, he had a mission to complete. He reached the temple's control center and shut down the disruptor field. The invisible barrier around Lehon collapsed. Ships could approach the planet freely now. More importantly, they could reach the Star Forge. Revan transmitted the coordinates to the Republic, told them it was time. Gather everything they had left and bring it to Lehon. This was the final battle. The Republic responded. What remained of their fleet jumped to the system over the following hours. Admiral Thorn Dodonna commanded the task force. Master Vandar Tokare, one of the few surviving Jedi Masters, came along to coordinate Force users in the battle. It wasn't a huge fleet. The Republic was exhausted after years of war, but it was everything they could spare. Every ship, every pilot, every soldier willing to make one last stand. They emerged from hyperspace to find Malak's forces waiting. The Star Forge hung in orbit like a dark sun, surrounded by hundreds of Sith warships. The station was actively building more ships even as the fleets assembled. Fresh fighters launching from docks, new destroyers moving to join the defensive screen. The Republic fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy with unlimited reinforcements. But they had something the Sith didn't expect. They had Revan, who knew the Starforge's weaknesses. They had a crew of people who'd beaten impossible odds before, and they had the desperation of people fighting for survival. The Battle of Rakata Prime was about to begin, the final confrontation of the Jedi Civil War. Everything would be decided in the next few hours. Republic versus Sith, light versus dark. The fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance above an ancient world that had seen this story play out before. The Republic fleet dropped out of hyperspace and immediately opened fire. There was no time for speeches or strategy sessions. This was it. The Star Forge floated in orbit like a mechanical planet. Sith warships surrounded it in defensive formations. Hundreds of destroyers, cruisers, and fighters protecting the station that built their unlimited fleet. Admiral Dodonna's Republic forces were outnumbered at least 3-1, maybe worse. But they charged in anyway because retreating meant losing everything. The Battle of the Star Forge began with capital ships exchanging fire at point-blank range. Turbo laser batteries lit up space. Fighters swarmed between the larger vessels. Ships exploded on both sides. This was the kind of desperate slugging match where experience and tactics mattered less than who could take more punishment. The Republic was getting hammered. For every Sith ship they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The Star Forge was actively building reinforcements during the battle. Fresh fighters launched from docking bays. New destroyers moved to fill gaps in the defensive line. The Republic couldn't win a straight fight. They needed something to change. While the fleets tore each other apart, the Ebon Hawk slipped through the chaos. Revan piloted the freighter through the space battle, dodging laser fire and debris. Karth handled weapons. The rest of the crew held on and prayed. They weren't trying to fight the Sith fleet. They were headed straight for the Star Forge itself. The Hawk dodged through swarms of fighters and found a docking port. Magnetic clamps locked on. Revan and his strike team flooded into the station along with a group of Jedi Knights who'd volunteered for this suicide mission. Inside the Star Forge was worse than anyone expected. The station was massive. Cathedral-sized chambers filled with assembly lines building battle droids. Docking bays launching fighters faster than the Republic could destroy them. And everywhere, the dark side pressed against their minds like physical weight. Sith troopers and Dark Jedi defended every corridor. Automated defense systems activated as intruders penetrated deeper. Revan's team fought through wave after wave, pushing toward the command spire where Malak waited. Then Bastila appeared again. She blocked their path, lightsaber ignited, standing between Revan and his goal. One more chance for Malak's apprentice to stop the man who used to be her ally. The duel was fierce. Bastila drew power from the Star Forge itself, the dark side energies making her faster and stronger. She attacked relentlessly, trying to overwhelm Revan through sheer aggression. But Revan didn't fight back the same way. He defended, deflected, refused to give her the battle she wanted. And through their Force bond, he talked to her, reminded her of who she really was. The Jedi who saved lives instead of taking them. The person who'd risked everything to help others. The woman he'd fallen in love with during their journey together. Bastila's attacks grew weaker as his words cut through the anger. The dark side thrived on hate and fear. Love and faith were its opposite. The bond between them carried those feelings stronger than any lightsaber strike. She broke. The darkness cracked, and light flooded back in. Bastila dropped her weapon and fell to her knees, horrified at what she'd become. Revan helped her up and told her she could still make this right. Use her battle meditation for the Republic one more time. She agreed. While Revan continued to the command spire, Bastila found a quiet chamber and began to meditate. Her power reached out across the space battle. Republic pilots suddenly felt their reflexes sharpen. Their shots connected. Their tactics worked. Meanwhile, Sith forces started making mistakes. Formations fell apart. Coordination disappeared. Admiral Dodonna noticed the shift immediately. Gaps opened in the Sith lines. His fleet exploited them without mercy. Republic fighters punched through defenses they couldn't crack minutes before. Capital ships scored devastating blows on Sith destroyers. The tide was turning. Bastila's battle meditation was giving them a chance. Revan reached the top of the command spire. Darth Malak was waiting. The throne room was a nightmare. Jedi Knights hung suspended in stasis pods around the chamber. Prisoners Malak had taken from Dantooine when he destroyed the Enclave. He'd been draining their life force through the Force to fuel his own power. Malak looked like a monster. His jaw was gone, replaced by a metal apparatus. Years of darkness had twisted him into something barely human. When he spoke, his voice came through the mechanical device. He didn't waste time talking, just ignited his lightsaber and attacked. The duel between former master and apprentice shook the chamber. Malak fought with raw power and hate. Revan countered with technique and control. Every time Malak started losing ground, he'd drain more life force from the captive Jedi to heal himself. Revan realized he couldn't win as long as those prisoners remained. He freed them one by one during the fight, cutting off Malak's source of power. Each Jedi he saved weakened Malak further. Finally, it was just the two of them. No tricks, no reserves. Just two Force users with lightsabers. Revan was stronger, not in raw power, but in control, in focus, in understanding what he was fighting for. Malak fought for power and pride. Revan fought to save people. The final strike cut Malak down. The Dark Lord collapsed, his mechanical respirator sparking and failing. In his last moments, Malak looked at his former master and admitted he'd been wrong. The dark side had destroyed them both. At least Revan had found his way back. Then Darth Malak died on the floor of his throne room while his empire burned around him. Revan didn't have time to process it. The Star Forge was coming apart. Republic ships were concentrating fire on critical points. The whole station shook with impacts. He grabbed the freed Jedi and ran. They raced through collapsing corridors back to the Ebon Hawk. The crew was already warming up the engines. Everyone piled aboard seconds before the docking port exploded. The Hawk blasted away from the dying station. Behind them, the Star Forge erupted in a series of massive explosions. The factory that built unlimited ships for whoever controlled it was gone. 30,000 years of Rakatan technology destroyed in fire. The remaining Sith ships lost all coordination. Their leaders were dead. Their source of unlimited reinforcements was gone. Admiral Dodonna's fleet cut them down without mercy. By the time the wreckage stopped falling, the battle was over. The Republic had won. The Jedi Civil War was done. Revan stood on the Ebonhawk's bridge with Bastila beside him. They'd both fallen to darkness. They'd both found their way back. And together, they'd ended the war that Revan had started. The Republic was saved. The Sith Empire was shattered. The Starforge was destroyed. And Revan had fulfilled a destiny nobody could have predicted when the Jedi Council first wiped his memories. He'd defeated the darkness by becoming something better than the Dark Lord he used to be. The Starforge was gone. Malak was dead. The war was over. So what was left? Not much. The Sith Empire fell apart almost immediately. Without Revan or Malak to hold it together, the whole thing collapsed like a house of cards. Sith warlords and Dark Jedi who'd been working together turned on each other instead. Everyone wanted to be the next Dark Lord. Nobody was strong enough to claim the title. Some fled to the unknown regions. Others went into hiding on backwater worlds. The Republic Navy hunted down the rest and liberated conquered planets one by one. Within months, the massive Sith war machine that almost destroyed the Republic didn't exist anymore. But the cost of victory was devastating. The Jedi Order was basically extinct. By the time fighting stopped, fewer than 100 Jedi remained alive and loyal to the light side. Think about that. An order that had existed for thousands of years with temples across the galaxy was down to less than 100 people. Many had died in battle. Many more fell to the dark side during the war. The Dantooine enclave was destroyed. Most of the council was dead or scattered. The few surviving Jedi had no central leadership and no safe place to gather. The Republic wasn't in much better shape. Billions of people died during 4 years of fighting. Entire worlds were left as wastelands. Talos, Taris, and dozens of others were either destroyed completely or turned into toxic ruins. Refugees flooded through space looking for new homes. Pirates and criminals thrived in areas where Republic authority had collapsed. Trade routes were broken. Economies were shattered. The government that emerged victorious was barely holding together. They tried to rebuild. A new Supreme Chancellor named Tol Kressa was elected specifically to oversee reconstruction. Major projects launched to heal damaged worlds. The Telosian Restoration Project brought Ithorian environmental engineers to try fixing what Malak had destroyed. But rebuilding an entire galaxy takes more than good intentions. The Republic's resources were stretched impossibly thin. Remote systems stayed lawless. Many worlds that needed help got nothing. And Revan, the hero who'd saved the Republic, he left. People celebrated him at first. Parades, medals, speeches about how he'd redeemed himself and defeated darkness. But Revan couldn't enjoy any of it. His memories kept coming back. Fragments of his time as Dark Lord. Knowledge about threats nobody else understood. He remembered the true Sith Empire out in the unknown regions. The one that had turned him and Malak in the first place. That empire was still out there, still planning, still waiting for the right moment to invade. The Jedi Civil War had just been a warm-up, a distraction. The real threat was coming. Revan made his choice. He said goodbye to Bastila, the woman he loved who'd saved him twice over. He entrusted Carth Onasi with helping the Republic recover. Then he took the Ebon Hawk, brought T-3M4 for company, and headed into the unknown regions alone. His mission was to find the true Sith Empire and stop it before it could launch another war. He never came back. Without Revan, things got worse for the Jedi. 3 new Sith Lords emerged from the shadows: Darth Traya, Darth Sion, and Darth Nihilus. They called themselves the Sith Triumvirate, and they had one goal: destroy every remaining Jedi. They waged a shadow war that became known as the First Jedi Purge. Assassinations, traps. Darth Nihilus even consumed an entire planet of Force users called Qatar, ending thousands in one feeding. Within 5 years, the Jedi Order was down to a handful of survivors hiding across the galaxy. It would take another hero, Mitra Surik, to eventually stop the Triumvirate. But that's a different story. The Jedi Civil War changed everything. For centuries afterward, people studied what went wrong, how Jedi could turn against Jedi, how a superweapon fueled by the dark side corrupted everyone who used it, how even heroes could fall if pushed hard enough. Future generations learned from these mistakes. The Republic outlawed Sith teachings. The Jedi became more careful about hubris and attachment. New safeguards went into place to prevent another civil war. But future Sith also learned from the war. Darth Bane studied Revan's methods centuries later when creating the Rule of Two. Even Palpatine, thousands of years down the line, drew inspiration from Revan's mix of military genius and manipulation. The war proved that the struggle between light and dark never really ends. It just takes different forms. Jedi and Sith would fight this same battle over and over across galactic history. Revan's story became legend. The Jedi who fell to darkness and found redemption. The Sith Lord who saved the Republic. The man who lost his identity and chose to become someone better. That's what the Jedi Civil War left behind. A shattered Republic slowly rebuilding. A nearly extinct Jedi Order struggling to survive. Lessons about power and corruption written in the blood of billions. And the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, people can choose a different path.